La Sabaneta Prison exposed. Inside one of the world's most infamous and dangerous jails. The gate that never closed. Before this story pulls you inside, subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment. Because once the gates of La Sabaneta close behind you, not everyone makes it back out. And you won't want to miss what comes next. The sirens were already fading when the pickup truck skidded to a halt outside the prison wall. Dust hung in the air like a hell breath. Inside the cab, Inspector Tomas Rivas stared at the iron gate of La Sabaneta Prison, its rusted bars blotched with years of neglect and corruption. The call had come in less than an hour earlier. A prison administrator missing. Last seen walking the inner yard at dawn. No alarms triggered. No witnesses willing to speak. In La Sabaneta, silence was policy. Rivas stepped out, heat pressing down on him, the air thick with sweat and diesel. La Sabaneta wasn't just a prison. It was a city inside a city, a lawless maze where inmates ruled and guards survived by looking the other way. Everyone knew it. Few said it out loud. A guard waved him through, with a tired nod. "Inspector, you're late." Rivas didn't answer. He passed under the gate, metal grinding against metal, and felt a familiar tightening in his chest. The yard stretched wide, crowded with men who didn't flinch at authority because authority rarely mattered here. Homemade stalls lined the walls. Wires dangled overhead. Music crackled from somewhere deep inside. This wasn't containment. It was control, just not by the state. The missing man's name was Alvaro Mendez, deputy administrator, 46, clean record, family in Valencia. He had been assigned to La Sabaneta 6 months earlier, a posting most officials tried to avoid. According to the logbook, Mendez had requested an unscheduled inspection of cell block C at sunrise. After that, nothing. Rivas met Captain Lucia Herrera near the watchtower. Herrera's uniform was pressed, her expression unreadable. "We searched the block," she said. No sign of a struggle. No cameras functioning in that corridor. Rivas raised an eyebrow. "All of them." Herrera hesitated. "Maintenance issues." He'd heard that before. Cameras failed when someone wanted them to. They walked together towards cell block C. The closer they got, the quieter the yard became, as if the prison itself were listening. Inmates watched from doorways, eyes sharp, calculating. Rivas caught fragments of whispers. Then nothing at all. Inside the block, the smell changed, damp concrete, old oil, something metallic. The corridor lights flickered. Herrera pointed to a door marked with a faded number. This is where Mendez was headed. Rivas noticed a lock. Scratched. Replaced recently. Who authorized this change? Herrera looked away. The inmates handled some repairs. That answer landed like a warning. In La Sabaneta, inmates handled many things: food distribution, internal discipline, even access to certain areas. The guard's authority ended where survival began. They moved on. At the end of the corridor was a stairwell leading down to the old administrative tunnels, a remnant from the prison's early days, officially sealed, unofficially used. Rivas stopped at the top step. "You searched down there?" he asked. Herrera nodded. Briefly, he repeated. "Why not thoroughly?" She met his gaze. "Because people don't go down there without permission." "Permission from whom?" Rivas asked. Herrera didn't answer. Outside the block, Rivas spoke to the few staff willing to talk. A junior guard mentioned hearing raised voices at dawn. Another claimed to see Mendez argue with an inmate known as El Cura, a man who preached order while running contraband routes through the prison. No one could agree on what the argument was about. No one could agree on where Mendez went after. By midday, the heat intensified, tempers rising with it. Rivas requested Mendez office files. What he found unsettled him. Financial discrepancies, unlogged inspections, a handwritten note tucked into a ledger, C-17. Do not proceed alone. C-17 wasn't an inmate. It was a section. Rivas returned to the tunnels. This time he went alone. The stairwell descended into cooler air, the sound of the prison fading behind him. The walls bore old paint and newer markings, arrows, symbols, names crossed out. He followed the corridor until it split. On the left, a collapsed passage. On the right, a door with no label. It was unlocked. Inside was a narrow room lit by a single bulb, a desk, a chair, a ledger open to the last page, and on the wall, a crude map of La Sabaneta, sections circled in red, lines connecting places that shouldn't have been connected at all, storage rooms to kitchens, cells to offices, tunnels to the outside drainage system. This wasn't chaos. It was design. Rivas flipped the ledger. Names appeared, guards, vendors, officials. Payments noted in dates and amounts. A network operating in plain sight, hidden behind fear and routine. Mendez hadn't gone missing by accident. He had stumbled into something organized, something protected. A noise echoed behind him. Footsteps. Rivas turned, hand moving instinctively to his sidearm. The doorway was empty. Then he noticed something else. A faint drag mark on the floor, leading to a second door behind the desk, one he hadn't seen at first. He pulled it open. The room beyond was larger, windowless, lined with filing cabinets. Most were empty. One wasn't. Inside lay Mendez's ID badge, bent, smeared with grime. On the cabinet door, carved deep into the metal, were 3 words that made Rivas's stomach drop. The prison decides. His radio crackled. Herrera's voice urgent. Inspector, get out of there. Now! Rivas backed away, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the words. He understood then what La Sabaneta really was. Not a broken prison, but a functioning system with its own rules and punishments. Mendez had tried to challenge it, and the prison had responded. As Rivas reached the corridor, the lights went out. In the darkness, a voice whispered from somewhere close, calm and certain. You're asking the wrong questions. And when the lights flickered back on, the second door behind him was gone, sealed shut, as if it had never existed at all. What Rivas had uncovered wasn't just a disappearance. It was a warning. The prison that watched back. By the time the lights came back on, La Sabaneta felt different, alert, offended, as if the walls themselves knew Inspector Tomas Rivas had crossed a line. The sealed door behind him was smooth now, freshly plastered, no hinge, no handle, no evidence it had ever existed. Rivas stood there longer than he should have, listening to his own breathing. The whisper replayed in his head. You're asking the wrong questions. It hadn't sounded threatening. It had sounded confident. When he returned to the surface, Captain Lucia Herrera was waiting, her jaw tight. You weren't supposed to go down there, she said. You knew, Rivas replied. You all knew. Herrera glanced around before answering. Inmates lingered too close, pretending not to listen. Knowing and surviving are not the same thing here. Rivas didn't argue. He had learned enough to understand that open confrontation inside La Sabaneta was suicide, professional or otherwise. Instead, he requested transfers, staff rosters, medical logs, food supply records. Herrera hesitated, then nodded. You have until sunset. That alone told him everything. Back in the administrative wing, Rivas spread the files across a metal table. Patterns emerged quickly. Guards assigned to cell block, rotated far less than others. Certain inmates never appeared in disciplinary reports despite obvious authority in the yard. And then there were the deaths, officially listed as illness, accidents, or inmate-on-inmate violence. But the timing was wrong. Too precise. Always following inspections, complaints, or paperwork audits. Mendez hadn't been the first. Just the first who hadn't stayed quiet. Rivas focused on one name that appeared again and again in indirect ways. Rafael El Curá Salgado. Notorious. Charismatic. Serving a long sentence for organized crime, yet living better than most guards. Officially, he was just another inmate. Unofficially, he was balanced. Rivas requested an interview. The guards laughed. You don't summon El Curá, one said. He decides when he speaks. An hour later, Rivas was escorted to a private corner of the yard, an insult disguised as cooperation. El Curá sat at a plastic table beneath a torn canopy, sipping coffee that hadn't come from the prison kitchen. He smiled as Rivas approached. Inspector, El Curá said warmly, you look like a man chasing ghosts. I'm chasing a missing administrator, Rivas replied. And a system that hide behind men like you. El Kura chuckled. Men like me exist because places like this are abandoned. Order doesn't disappear. It just changes hands. Rivas leaned closer. What happened to Alvaro Mendez? El Kura's smile faded, not with fear, but calculation. You should ask why he came here alone, he said. Why he ignored warnings meant to keep him alive. Warnings from whom? Rivas pressed. El Kura stood. The interview was over. From the prison. That night, Rivas reviewed the tunnel map he'd photographed before the door vanished. He noticed something he'd missed earlier. One route extended beyond the outer wall, intersecting with an old drainage line marked inactive. According to city records, it had been sealed decades ago. Records lied. Rivas left the prison after dark and drove the perimeter. Near the eastern wall, half hidden by weeds and trash, he found a concrete opening barely wide enough to crawl through. The air smelled of rot and damp earth. Inside, the tunnel sloped upward toward freedom, not confinement. Footprints marked the mud. Recent. As Rivas followed them, a realization settled in. La Sabaneta wasn't just keeping people in. It was moving things and people out. The tunnel ended beneath an abandoned warehouse. Inside, Rivas found crates stamped with outdated government seals. Food supplies, medical equipment, even weapons parts. Everything that had supposedly gone missing over the years. And then he saw the chair. Metal, bolted to the floor. Straps undone, still damp. On the ground beside it lay a blood-stained sleeve with an embroidered name, Mendez. Rivas stepped back, pulse racing. This wasn't an execution site. It was an interrogation room. Someone had questioned Mendez. Hard. A phone buzzed in Rivas's pocket. Unknown number. Inspector, a distorted voice said. You don't understand the rules yet. Then explain them, Rivas replied. A pause. Rule 1. No one leaves La Sabaneta with the truth. The line went dead. By morning, the warehouse was gone. Emptied, scrubbed, abandoned again. Official reports denied its existence. Herrera avoided Rivas's eyes. The guards watched him more closely now. Fingers near triggers, smiles gone. Then the real pressure started. A witness recanted a statement. A junior guard who'd spoken to Rivas was found unconscious in his bunk, officially the victim of a fall. Rivas's superiors called, urging him to wrap things up. The message was clear. Stop digging. Instead, Rivas leaked a fragment of the ledger to an external journalist he trusted. It was a risk, but silence was worse. Hours later, riots erupted in Cell Block C. Smoke filled the yard. Sirens screamed. Inmates surged, guards overwhelmed. In the chaos, Rivas spotted El Kura being escorted, not restrained but protected, toward the tunnels. Rivas followed. Gunfire echoed. Shadows collided. He reached the sealed corridor just as explosives detonated. The wall burst open, revealing the hidden door once more. Inside stood El Kura, calm amid the chaos. You see now, El Kura said. This place doesn't fall. It adapts. Rivas raised his weapon. Where's Mendez? El Kura's eyes hardened. Closer than you think. Before Rivas could react, a blast shook the corridor. Smoke swallowed everything. When it cleared, El Kura was gone, and so was the chair from the warehouse. All that remained was a single file dropped on the floor. Inside was a photograph taken days earlier. It showed Alvaro Mendez alive, bruised, staring into the camera. Behind him stood a man in a guard's uniform. A man Rivas recognized immediately, Captain Lucia Herrera. And scrawled across the bottom of the photo were words that froze him in place. Next inspection, you. The truth that never escaped. By dawn, La Sabaneta was under lockdown. Sirens faded into a suffocating silence, broken only by shouted orders and the metallic echo of gates slamming shut. Inspector Tomas Rivas sat alone in a concrete office, the photograph spread on the table in front of him. Herrera's face stared back, calm, controlled, familiar. The same expression she wore every day inside the prison. Everything clicked into place. La Sabaneta was never lawless. It was governed quietly, efficiently, by an agreement between power on the inside and protection on the outside. El Corral was not the king. He was the administrator, and Herrera was his shield. Rivas knew he had one move left. He requested a formal meeting with Herrera, citing concerns about the riot report. She agreed immediately. Too immediately. Confidence like that came from believing the game was already won. They met in the command office overlooking the yard. Smoke stains still marked the walls. Herrera closed the door behind her and smiled thinly. "You should have left when you had the chance." "You tortured Mendez," Rivas said. "No accusation. Just fact." Herrera didn't flinch. "Mendez tried to expose a system that keeps this place from turning into a graveyard. He wanted headlines. Reform. Outsiders." She stepped closer. "Outsiders don't survive La Sabaneta." "Where is he?" Rivas asked. Herrera looked past him toward the prison. "Alive. For now." That was the compromise. Rivas revealed his hand. "I leaked the ledger. Partial. Enough to raise questions." For the first time, Herrera hesitated. "To who?" "A journalist who doesn't scare easily," Rivas said. "And to internal affairs." Herrera laughed softly. "Then you still don't understand. Investigations die here. People get reassigned. Evidence disappears." She lowered her voice, just like Mendez. Alarms blared again, different this time. A perimeter alert. A guard burst into the room. "Captain, we've got movement near the drainage tunnels. External vehicles." Herrera's composure cracked. She turned to Rivas slowly. "What did you do?" Rivas answered honestly. "I told them where the prison breathes." Chaos erupted. Sirens. Shouting. Gunfire echoing far away. Indistinct. Panicked. Rivas moved first, locking the office door from the inside. Herrera reached for her weapon, but Rivas was faster. "This ends now," he said. Herrera's voice dropped. "You think exposure fixes this?" "The moment La Sabaneta falls, something worse replaces it." "Maybe," Rivas replied. "But not today." He cuffed her as the sounds outside grew closer. Boots, commands shouted in unfamiliar accents. Federal units. International observers. Too many eyes to silence. They escorted Herrera out as armored vehicles filled the yard. El Corral was nowhere to be found. He never was when the walls shook. Hours later, in a secured medical wing beneath the prison, Rivas found Alvaro Mendez. Alive, bruised, exhausted, but breathing. Mendez looked at him weakly. "You came." Rivas nodded. "You were right." Mendez closed his eyes. "It won't matter. They'll say I exaggerated." "Maybe," Rivas said, "but not everything disappears." The official investigation lasted months. Reports were redacted, names removed. Herrera was charged, not for conspiracy, but for procedural violations. El Corral vanished into another facility, another shadow. La Sabaneta remained open. Reforms were announced. Cameras installed. New leadership appointed. On paper, the prison was reborn. But Rivas knew better. Years later, he would receive a package with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, an empty chair in a different room, in a different prison. Same straps, same stains. On the back, a message written in careful handwriting. Order never dies. It just relocates. Rivas burned the photo and walked away from the case forever. La Sabaneta still stands. Quieter now. Cleaner. But at night, when the lights dim and the guards change shifts, the prison listens, waiting for the next truth brave enough to knock on its walls. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you question what really happens behind locked gates and official reports, subscribe, like, comment, and share, because the next story goes even deeper, and once you hear it, you won't forget it.